You'll let me know, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Healing Connection Network and the premiere of my new show, Power, Perception, and You. I'm so excited to have this opportunity to share with you how the power of perception can empower your life. The ideas discussed on this show can be found in my new book. Here it is, The Peephole Effect, Perception is Everything. Now, this show, like the book, will inspire you to recognize your divine greatness and the unlimited possibilities that await you. So this premiere episode is extra special because I'm going to be interviewing the one and only Levi Kreis. Now, let me tell you about Levi. Levi is a Tony Award-winning theater and film actor and singer-songwriter. He originated the role of Jerry Lee Lewis on Broadway. He has starred in several major motion pictures, and his music has been featured in many TV shows and movies. Not only is Levi talented beyond belief, but his journey includes a spiritual path. And if you have not heard about Levi yet, you will be very, very thankful that you did. So welcome, Levi.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It is great to be with you today.
Yes, I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you so much for being my first guest. That's
my pleasure.
Great. Yeah. Okay, so Levi, so many of us, we know you for your amazing music, but many people might not know how passionate you are about discussing spiritual principles. That you are, in fact, as we were discussing earlier, a spiritual activist, right? Yes. And they may not know that you are a licensed practitioner through the Centers for Spiritual Living.
Yes.
And you and I have that in common because I'm also a licensed practitioner. And for those watching that don't know what that is, a practitioner is somebody who has taken 4 years of intense spiritual study at the Centers for Spiritual Living. And the study is based on New Thought principles. And we are trained in affirmative prayer. So we use that as a tool in our lives. And we help others with affirmative prayer, right? So, Levi, I would like for you to share with everyone how you began your spiritual journey into the New Thought teachings. Can you tell us about that?
I would love to.
Okay, great.
My time pouring into music and pouring into my career, and I found myself in Los Angeles sort of forgetting the importance of having a spiritual identity, having a spiritual life, of seeing myself as a spiritual being. Somehow the journey led me into crystal meth addiction, led me into all kinds of self-destructive behavior, which was with ex-partners who were alcoholic and abusive physically and emotionally. Basically, I had realized that everything that I was manifesting in my life was a reflection of my lack of self-worth, and that I had forgotten the truth of who I am. I grew up fundamental Baptist, turned Pentecostal. So I definitely knew who I was as what we used to call the King's kid, So I had a sense of like, from the traditional Christian standpoint of being a child of God and knowing what the promises of the Bible would give me. But as someone who eventually didn't identify as traditional Christian first, I began to lose a sense of how important it was to see life as a spiritual experience, not just a physical, mental, and emotional experience. And so, drugs took me down to my bottom. I had to turn to spirituality once again to find my way out of a pretty dangerous addiction that I had acquired along the way. I was in Chicago at the time, and I found Bodhi Spiritual Center, which was a great center. Mark Anthony Lord, and at the time, Reverend Denise Schubert, who you know because of being in Raleigh, was their teaching. And it was the teachings of New Thought that helped me really flip the switch and begin to understand who I am as a divine expression of God, sort of already having that pattern of perfection within my DNA. It was such an incredibly radical concept for me at the time, because of course when you grow up being told that you are inherently sinful, inherently flawed, and that you must rely on an outside source to find any sort of sense of wholeness.
Yes.
Sometimes that doesn't necessarily, well, for me, it didn't take me to the next level of healing.
Right, right. Wow. Yes, thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of people can relate to that, particularly the idea of being sort of separated from God or being told that we're bad, you know.
Yeah.
I call that unworthiness syndrome. And I know you call it self-loathing, which is what we're taught to do, basically, to be loathe ourselves. And
Yes.
I think, yeah. And so I know that you're passionate about letting people know that they are divine emanations of spirit. And I think there's something in us, in each and every one of us, that knows that despite being told otherwise. You know,
it's true. It's true. And in my blog, it's very important for me to. So I have a blog at my website with LeviKreis.com. I call the blog "Imagine Paradise." Paradise is yours to the degree that you can imagine it. Exactly. So it's always believing that, like your book talks so much about how our thoughts and feelings and belief become things. I kind of riff on that a lot too. But my goal is to really, avoid the woo-woo about it and say, people, this is practical, okay? We are physical beings that believe in our physical health, so we go to the gym. We are mental beings, so therefore we understand critical thinking. We try to get an education. We work our minds so that our critical thinking skills and our ability to problem solve is in top effect. How is it that we are how is it that being spiritual beings have become so unimportant to us as a whole, that we don't realize that there needs to be a daily spiritual practice, that there needs to be, the spirituality has to be as tangible as this laptop in front of me.
Yes.
It's just simply the reality. We're physical, mental, emotional, spiritual beings. What does that mean to our viewers? What does that mean to our readers? And it can mean whatever they are inclined for it to mean. I think for me, spiritual activism is just committing to a daily spiritual practice of whatever causes you to connect with your divine self.
Right. Because everything starts from there. Wouldn't you agree? Like, it's like if you don't have that in order, then your work won't be in order. Your relationships won't be in order, meaning they won't be in alignment with the truth of yourself and the truth of the spiritual universe or whatever.
Yeah.
But it all has to start there. And so I think the crux of the lots of problems is what we were saying earlier, was that, we're told we're bad, we're separate, we're this, we're that. But it is important every day to remember that's why they call it a spiritual practice. We have to practice it every day, or practice presence, practice, because everything kind of stems from there,
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And there's a lot of, I've had moments in my life where I've been incredibly successful, but I've done it, but I know that things have taken longer than they had to because I was trying to muscle it outside of being in spiritual alignment. so perhaps something that literally, if I was in the flow, and I've seen this 100 times in my life, if I'm in that spiritual connectedness and that flow, something that could take 20 minutes ends up taking 3 days if I'm not, It's just, do you want to do life easy or do you want to struggle? And I'm not very fond of struggling.
Right.
Not in that response.
Right, that's right. And it's funny because it's almost like surrendering to that fact, right? That we are spiritual beings, we are spiritual instruments, and that out from our limited thinking or spirit forbid, God forbid, our limited past, if we go forward from that point, that's so limited. But once we can understand and embrace that the power, the essence of this incredible loving universe is in and through us, then we can go forward more confidently, and it's not for us to do, it's for us to allow to be done, right?
It's an open vessel. I'm totally going to riff on what you just said, because your book speaks so brilliantly to limiting beliefs and how we're able to choose how we want to perceive the world. We get to choose what lens, as you say in the book, what lens we see the world through. It's coming from I mean, we all have a story. Mine is no more special than anyone else's, but it would be very tempting for me to see the world through a lens of where I was victimized by traditional religion, or I was victimized by, the discrimination that I've experienced as a gay man, or through the eyes of being abused in abusive relationships. I could totally enjoy so many layers of victimhood, which is very popular these days. We're all we're all grappling. So, society today loves to grapple for the greatest victim story that you can find. But the truth of the matter is, I get to realize, and this is the good stuff right here. I love this so much. My mess is my ministry. My mess is my ministry. I am now an authority on certain things because I have gone through them, and I have chosen a perspective of empowerment and service to others who might need to hear what I've been through. And that flip for me was like just a real lifesaver, because then I quit whining about perhaps things that I experienced in my life that are very real. I'm not downplaying what we go through. I realize I don't mean to put it in terms that are invalidating the pain I've gone through, or the pain you've gone through, or the pain any of us have gone through. But I think that when you realize that you are a divine expression of God, I mean, is God going to sit here and say, oh gosh, what am I going to do now that I'm so limited? I've gone through so much crap. That's God. I mean, God is going to say, I am fully equipped and fully prepared to be able to be a great gift to the world and my community and the world around me, Right.
And I think that it's not even putting a different spin on your story, because what happened, but it is how you perceive it, like a perception of it. And you could say, when you can make that sort of separation, you say, yes, in fact, that happened, fine. But I think in New Thought, we're big on taking responsibility, but it's not the responsibility like, oh, I did this to myself. It's more of, with the spiritual laws that we were contributing to, co-creating all along, and didn't realize it. So I think that's key. And once you realize that, then the mess, you can bless the mess, right?
Bless the mess. I love that. I always love that. Bless the mess.
Yeah. That's from my
you and I had some pretty great teachers. I had one teacher in particular who I so appreciated. I don't think he'll mind me saying this, Reverend James Mellon, who I still look up to so much. And I think it's because he was always so no nonsense. And he really made me take responsibility for my life. And it was just in the spirit of, like you said, knowing the principles and knowing that, gravity is a law. If we drop a book, it will fall. Law of attraction is a law. So whatever we're vibrating with, we're likely going to attract. The universe only knows yes. So it's just going to be a mirror back to us. So the hardest pill, for instance, for me to swallow, probably a very unpopular thing to say, but the teaching did teach me this. If I am attracting, let's say in my past, the physically abusive relationships that I've had, the sad thing about it is, if I know the law, I have to realize that on some level, that situation was mirroring back to me my own lack of self-worth. Therefore, on some level, I was a vibrational match to that. And from a law of attraction standpoint, someone of that nature would not ever even have been on my radar had I already been in a vibration of self-love and self-worth, and I am a king and I am worthy of a loving relationship. That vibration does not attract the people that I've attracted in the past.
Right. No, I get it. And it's sometimes, but I think it takes some courage also to accept that, to swallow that and say, okay, you know what? I did, nobody says, I want a relationship where I'm going to be abused. Nobody actually says that, but there's a subconscious thing that says, I'm not worthy of a loving relationship, or please hurt me subconsciously because I know I'm so bad and I've sinned so much and I've done so bad. So you're going around subconsciously seeking somebody that's going to deliver that punishment or whatever, or or if you're constantly bashing yourself, you're always saying, whatever, you're just always bashing yourself, and I think the self-talk, and you talk about in your blog and other places about the self-loathing that happens, that's what's going to happen. That's going to show up as, could show up many different ways, but in many cases it could show up like that in a relationship.
Yeah. And like you say so often, it's unconscious. These we are so often creating from our unconscious beliefs, and that's what's so wonderful about the work of New Thought, is that it teaches us to be able to get past what we are consciously professing with our mouth and uncovering the real weeds that might be burying somewhere in the back of our experiences, like you talk about with our beliefs and thoughts and our feelings are really the creative aspect of our life. So if these things are unconscious, it really behooves us to look deeper into, like you said, because no one's going to consciously attract a relationship that's that kind of with that kind of volatility,
Right. And so many times, whether it's the rotten job or a rotten experience or the rotten relationship or whatever, we're just bewildered. But this kind of gives a clue to what, why that happened. So it's very helpful. And in fact, these experiences serve as proof. I know one of your blogs mentioned something like that these are in fact proof of the creativity of our thoughts, beliefs, and feelings,
Yeah, that's what I love about religious science and the science of mind, because it's taken, the 5 major world religions, for example. When we were studying, we had to learn the 5 major world religions and what the commonalities were with all of them.
Yes.
What I just believe is so profound is that you can take the core principles of these wonderful major world religions and distill them down into provable scientific metaphysics,
Yes,
and
the golden thread, if you will.
Yes, and that you can actually do the work and prove in your own laboratory of your life that these principles work, that the law of attraction works, that your thoughts, feelings, and beliefs really do become your life experience.
Right, that's right. So, because there's a practical application of this. It's not just about reading about it or saying, yeah, that sounds right or whatever. But if you really are honest with yourself, or if you really take an honest look at what's happening, you can see that sort of co-creation happening, or how you sort of contributed to this as well. So I think it's an empowering, that's empowering. That's nothing. Lots of times people get frightened, or they think, oh my gosh, what have I done? Or whatever. But we know, And so I tell people, well, that's the good news, because that means that if you created that, then you have the creative power to create something else. And right. Because it's like, oh my gosh, So I think that brings into play the idea of forgiveness in this, what we study. It's known as like the now, or forgiveness, that it's always in every moment, and I think that that's something that we have to realize. And I'm going to ask you about one of your songs that kind of goes to that. As you know, I love your music. The music has such just beautiful, inspirational message, and it's just so real and so raw. Just tell everybody you got to check out his music, because it's amazing. But one of my all-time favorite songs of yours that you wrote is "Let It Go," and it's not the Disney one, folks. People are going to think it's not that. This was written long before that. That's a beautiful song, but this is a beautiful song too. And I believe that it is the ultimate forgiveness song. And my other favorite song is "Leftover." I think I told you this. But I relate that to a time when I was like brutally dumped by a boyfriend a few years ago. But we're not going to go there.
I've talked about mine. So now you
right. But what I want to get back to "Let It Go." I wanted to ask you what your inspiration was for that song, and just tell us about that song. It's just an incredible song.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. "Let It Go" was written a few hours before my last drug binge, actually. I was
Okay.
on the floor of my studio apartment, actually coming down,
Mm,
uh,
wow.
which people know the other side of coming down from crystal meth is an incredibly depressing low. But for me, I sat there in that moment realizing, well, this is my bottom. And I knew that I had sort of reached a new level. And for me, I realized, well, is this going to continue to go in the same direction if I don't begin to understand who I am from a more of a compassionate standpoint. I'm a perfectionist. I'm German through and through with my work ethic. I'm very hard on myself, and I've always been hard on myself, never good enough, always more. And I could tell that in that moment of, this habit that I don't know, I had never stopped to see myself as compassionate. I never stopped to love myself and to say, wait a minute, your healing, your sobriety begins in your ability to stop and forgive the past right now. Forgive the fact that you fell off the wagon again. Forgive the fact that you haven't been able to put much time together. Forgive, it never occurred to me to let myself off the hook. I know that's probably strange to some people who sort of already just landed and find themselves. But for me, that song of self-forgiveness, of just let it go. There's still a fire in me that no past can put out.
I love
It's calling me.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All those things was like, oh, okay, it's time to forgive me.
Right.
Because until I let myself off the hook, I'm just going to keep beating myself up with self-destructive choice after self-destructive choice.
Right.
And then I began to study in my sobriety and in New Thought that at the core of every addiction is the issue of self-worth. And so it made perfect sense for me then to look back and find it. Creating that song, Let It Go, was sort of like the flagpost for me to always remind me and say, hey, your sobriety is dependent on realizing the value of who you are and how very special that I am and how very special that we all are,
Yes, and I love that message that is in your songs and your work and in your blog. It's there. I mean, and as a spiritual activist myself, I implore people to really realize that they are love in form, this divine love, this divine essence in form. And I know you're passionate about people realizing that and knowing that too. And I think that it's wonderful to share. Like you're just so honest and helpful, I think, in your blog and in your songs about these struggles. And that is the way out. And the one blog on addiction, I think, is that it is a spiritual issue. I agree with you on that completely on that blog. As we were saying even earlier in the show, that everything starts with that spiritual, knowing that, with the spiritual thing. So, of course, an addiction would be, a crisis of the spirit, basically, like in your blog. And so I think that's very, very powerful. And it's funny that you mentioned those lines. Those are my favorite lines. That the one that says, there's a fire in you that no past can put out, and it's calling you. Right.
Yeah.
That's the divine spark. There's that fire is the divine spark. That's how I that you wrote it. And I think that is just so powerful, that line. And the other line where it says, but that's over now, time for me to move on. Incredible. And also applying that to others as well. In other words, even the self-harm that you've done, right? That can't put you out, but something else that somebody else has done to you. So the forgiveness song, the Let It Go, to me, it applies in both ways. Like just letting other people off the hook too,
Oh yeah, and isn't that it's sometimes I think it's easier to let me off now that I've learned how to forgive myself. Sometimes I think it's easier to let myself off the hook than other people. But it goes to the wonderful truth that it's a process and that we never stop We never stop expanding and growing and learning. And I'm personally dealing with like forgiveness from the aspect of what you just spoke of right now, and writing music about what that means for me as a spiritual being and how to liberate myself by liberating the other person. And that's actually a song that's going to be on my November album of original material.
Good. Yeah. So I can't wait for your new music, because I can only imagine how beautiful that song is. But that's an amazing point. Is people, I think they wrestle with forgiveness, self-forgiveness, or forgiveness of others. That's a huge topic. I mean, it's that's just huge. But that's important too, because that informs your, it affects everything. It affects every cell in your body. All this, if you're unforgiving towards yourself or others. Once you release it, or like you say, let it go, then you can just start healing, or you can feel and see that divine spark again.
Yeah. And I love that you talk about just us talking about it, because I think the more of us that just sort of allowed our mess to show, and maybe just been like, forget the proprieties and how we come across to people, and the more that we all share these things, the more that you tell about your life and your story, and the more that I do as well, we realize like, oh my gosh, we're really all the same. We're all going through the same.
Yeah, we all are. And then that helps too in forgiveness. Like, we're all on. You have your path, and I have my path, but these laws and the spiritual principles, I should say, that we were talking about, apply to everybody equally, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So that's amazing. Well, I'm looking at the time, and I think we're almost out of time. I can't believe I could talk to you like all day. So
likewise. I'm glad to do this. Thanks for having me.
Yes, but I don't want to miss this opportunity to talk about your new album, Broadway, and your tour. If you could just tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. In March, I released my very first Broadway album, and it's in the style of my most popular album, One of the Ones, where I really tried to reimagine these Broadway tunes from the sensibilities of a singer-songwriter, and to make them accessible to people who may not necessarily be Broadway fans. So we're finally taking that album, which is available on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, anywhere you buy music. We're finally getting on the road, and in July, we're going to be hitting Algonquin, Maine. We're going to be hitting Chicago. We're going to be hitting Los Angeles, San Diego, San Francisco, Seattle, Salt Lake City. So please go to levikreis.com and check out and see if I'm coming to a city near you, because I'd love to see you guys.
Right. So, I was just going to tell people, if he's coming to your city, you've got to go see him. It's incredible. His live performances are just, there are no words to describe how incredible they are. So I would just recommend that to everybody.
Thank you.
So I just want to thank you, Levi. I mean, this was just such an incredible time together, and just thank you for being my first guest on this show. And it was quite an honor to have you here. And I hope you have a great day. And
thank you. And listen, congratulations on your book. I mean, the people effect, perception is everything. Everyone needs to go out and hold it back up, because this book is speaking so clearly about the principles that we're talking about. So everybody, if you haven't read it yet, go grab it.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So thank you, Levi, and everyone, my viewers. Just have a blessed day, and thank you. Thank you.